On a quiet street in suburban Chicago, Sarah Mitchell works two jobs just to keep the lights on. Her life is a constant struggle of past due notices and missed rent payments, but in one heart-stopping moment, everything changes. Through the thick smoke of a neighbor's burning house, she hears a child's cry. Without hesitation, Sarah plunges into the inferno, emerging minutes later with a terrified 6-year-old girl in her arms. The media calls her a hero. The fire department commends her bravery. But as detectives dig deeper into the child's identity, they uncover a web of secrets that will shake their city to its core. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Could this random act of courage be the key to solving one of Chicago's most baffling cold cases? The emergency room's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Sarah's soot-stained face. Her waitress uniform, still reeking of smoke, bore testament to the morning's chaos. She'd been heading to her second job when she heard the screams. Now, sitting in the sterile hospital waiting room, reality began to sink in. Her hands trembled slightly, whether from adrenaline or exhaustion, she couldn't tell. The girl hadn't let go of her hand since they'd emerged from the flames, refusing to be separated even as the paramedics worked. "Ms. Mitchell?" A tired-looking nurse approached, clipboard in hand. "We need to complete the admission forms for Jane Doe." Jane Doe? Sarah glanced at the small figure curled up in the adjacent chair, dark curls falling over her face. "You haven't been able to identify her?" The nurse lowered her voice. No identification was found at the scene. The house was apparently vacant, listed for sale. "We're still trying to determine how she got inside." Sarah felt the girl's grip tighten on her hand. Those deep brown eyes, intelligent and wary, seemed to hold secrets far beyond her years. Detective Marcus arrived as the nurse departed, his weathered face carrying the weight of too many disturbing cases. He pulled up a chair, notepad ready, but his eyes fixed on the child with unusual intensity. "Ms. Mitchell, I need you to walk me through exactly what happened." Sarah closed her eyes, remembering. "I was walking to the bus stop. I worked the morning shift at Palmer's Diner. There was smoke coming from the Ferguson's old place. It's been empty since they moved to Florida." She swallowed hard. "I heard crying. Nobody else was around. I just acted. You broke down the door?" "Window, side of the house, the door was too hot." Sarah's free hand unconsciously touched the minor burns on her arm. "She was in the upstairs bedroom, huddled in the corner. The smoke was—" She shuddered. "I don't know how she survived that long." The detective's pen scratched across his notepad. "And she hasn't spoken? Not a single word?" Sarah shook her head. "No, but—" She hesitated, looking at the girl who seemed to be studying Detective Marcus with unnerving focus. "She understands everything. I can tell. This isn't shock or trauma. At least not only that, she's choosing not to speak." Marcus leaned forward, his voice gentling. "Sweetheart, can you tell me your name? Where your parents are?" The girl turned her face into Sarah's arm, but not before Sarah caught a flash of something in her eyes. Fear. Or was it defiance? "Detective," Sarah started, but he held up a hand. "Ms. Mitchell, there's something you should know. That house has been empty for months. No utilities, no signs of squatters. But when our team searched it, they found something concerning." He pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. "This was in the bedroom where you found her." Sarah stared at the image. A small backpack, high-end and barely scuffed, lay open on the floor. Inside were carefully packed clothes, some food, and a water bottle. "She was prepared," Sarah whispered. "She wasn't trapped there by accident." "No," Marcus agreed grimly. "She wasn't. And given certain aspects of this case, I'm going to need to involve my colleagues in missing persons." He stood, straightening. His jacket. "I'll have an officer posted outside. Neither of you should leave the hospital until we've sorted this out." As he walked away, Sarah felt a small tug on her sleeve. The girl was holding out a crumpled piece of paper, a page torn. "From a hospital magazine?" On it, in careful handwriting far too mature for a 6-year-old, were written 2 words: "Trust you." Sarah stared at the note, then at the child whose eyes now held a silent plea. Outside the window, news vans were already gathering, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like metal flowers, hungry for a story. Something told her this was just the beginning. The nurse returned with admission forms, and Sarah began filling them out, acutely aware that every box marked "unknown" was another mystery, another thread in a web she was only beginning to understand. The girl watched each stroke of her pen with laser focus, as if memorizing everything. A doctor arrived to check the girl's vitals again, and Sarah noticed how she flinched almost imperceptibly at his approach, not with fear of doctors, but with something more specific. When he reached for his stethoscope, the girl's eyes fixed on his hospital ID badge for just a fraction too long. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This child wasn't just afraid, she was assessing, calculating, watching for something, or someone. "Everything looks good," the doctor announced, making notes on his tablet. "Remarkably good considering the smoke exposure. We'll want to keep her overnight for observation, but I'm staying with her," Sarah said firmly, surprising herself with her own conviction. The girl's hand squeezed hers in response. The doctor nodded, unsurprised. "Of course, I'll have them bring in a cot." He paused at the door. "Ms. Mitchell, the police will want to interview her as soon as possible. If she starts talking, you'll be the first to know," Sarah assured him, while silently adding, "after she decides it's safe." Night fell over Chicago. The hospital quiet, save for the muted sounds of the evening shift. Sarah watched the girl sleep, finally peaceful after hours of vigilance. The note lay on the bedside table. "Trust you." 2 simple words that felt like both a promise and a warning. Tomorrow would bring questions, investigations and complications she couldn't yet imagine. But for now, in the gentle beeping of monitors and the soft glow of city lights through the window, Sarah made a silent vow to protect this mysterious child who had chosen her as a lifeline. She didn't know then how that promise would change everything. Morning brought chaos to the 8th floor of Chicago General. News crews clustered at every entrance, their cameras tracking anyone who entered or left. Sarah's phone buzzed constantly with messages from her 2 employers, sympathy mixed with implied threats about missed shifts. The girl sat cross-legged on the hospital bed, a pile of paper and crayons spread before her. She drew with remarkable precision for her age, each stroke deliberate and purposeful. Sarah noticed a pattern emerging, a distinctive crest or symbol repeated in the corner of each drawing. A lion rampant, surrounded by what looked like ivy leaves. "That's beautiful," Sarah commented, watching the girl shade in another perfect replica of the symbol. "Is it something you've seen before?" The girl's only response was to tear the page carefully from her notepad and hand it to Sarah. On the back, in that same mature handwriting, "Look closer." A knock at the door made them both start. Detective Marcus entered, accompanied by a woman in a sharp business suit. "Ms. Mitchell," Marcus nodded. "This is Detective Claire Rodriguez from Missing Persons. We need to talk." Sarah glanced at the girl, who had already begun another drawing, seemingly absorbed but with tension visible in her small shoulders. "Missing persons?" Sarah kept her voice steady. "You've identified her?" "Not exactly," Rodriguez replied, pulling up a chair. "But we've found some interesting parallels to an old case." She placed a file on the bedside table. "What do you know about the Blackwood disappearance?" Sarah frowned. "The name sounds familiar, but 4 years ago," Marcus cut in, "Alexandra Blackwood, age 2, vanished from her family's Lake Forest estate. No ransom demands, no leads. The case went cold." He gestured to the girl's drawings. "That symbol she keeps drawing, it's the Blackwood family crest." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She looked at the girl. Could she be 6? The age would fit. "DNA testing is already underway," Rodriguez added. But there's something else you should know. The Blackwoods aren't just wealthy, they're powerful. If this is Alexandra, there will be complications, Marcus finished grimly. As if on cue, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her landlord. Final warning about late rent. She fought down a wave of panic. Her world was already complicated enough without being drawn into some high society mystery. The girl, possibly Alexandra, suddenly slid from the bed and walked to Detective Rodriguez. She pointed at the detective's coffee cup, then made a writing motion. Rodriguez handed her a pen, and the girl wrote directly on the cup. "They're watching." The detectives exchanged looks. "Who's watching, sweetheart?" Rodriguez asked gently. Instead of responding, the girl returned to her drawings, but now she was sketching something new, what looked like a floor plan, with X's marked at specific points. "My God," Marcus breathed. "That's the Blackwood estate." Sarah moved closer, studying the drawing. The girl's hand moved with certainty, adding details that no 6-year-old should know. Security camera locations, guard rotations marked with precise timing. "This is why she trusts you," Rodriguez said quietly to Sarah. "You're the only one not connected to her old life, the only wild card." A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. A man's authoritative voice carried through the door. "I don't care about hospital policy. I represent the Blackwood family, and if that's Alexandra, the..." Girl's crayon snapped in her hand. In one fluid motion, she gathered her drawings and slipped into the small bathroom, closing the door with a soft click. Sarah moved instinctively to stand between the bathroom door and the room's entrance, just as a man in an expensive suit burst. Followed by flustered hospital staff. "Mr. Wells," Marcus stepped forward. "This is an active investigation." "And I have a court order," the lawyer cut him off, producing a document. "If that child is Alexandra Blackwood, she's to be immediately remanded to family custody." Sarah felt a chill. The girl's warning echoed in her mind. They're watching. Something wasn't right. The lawyer's appearance was too convenient, too perfectly timed. She caught Marcus's eye, saw him register the same suspicion. "The DNA results aren't back," Rodriguez argued. "We can't confirm." "Then let me see her," Wells demanded. "One look, that's all I need." Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another text, but not from her landlord. "Unknown number. Don't let them take her." The bathroom door cracked open behind her. A small hand pressed something into Sarah's palm, a crumpled drawing, the crest again, but with a subtle difference. This version had a small mark, like a scar, across the lion's face. Sarah studied it, then looked at the impeccable crest pinned to Mr. Wells's lapel. No scar. "I think," she said carefully, "we need to verify your credentials, Mr. Wells. The real Blackwood crest is quite distinctive." The lawyer's face flickered, just for a moment, but enough. His hand moved toward his jacket pocket. Marcus's gun cleared its holster. "Hands where I can see them." What followed was chaos. Wells bolted, Rodriguez tackled him, and a gun skittered across the floor. Not the kind lawyers usually carry. Hospital security swarmed in. In the midst of it all, Sarah felt a tug on her sleeve. The girl held up another note. "Time to go." Sarah looked at the chaos, at Marcus shouting into his radio about compromised security and false credentials. She thought about her rent, her jobs, her simple life crumbling around her. Then she looked at the girl's eyes. Too old, too wise, holding secrets that powerful people would kill to keep. Sarah made her choice. "Okay," she whispered, "together." They slipped out during the confusion, the girl leading them through service corridors she couldn't possibly know existed. Behind them, sirens began to wail. Sarah's simple life was over. Something new, something dangerous and profound, was beginning, and the girl hadn't let go of her hand. Rain pelted the windows of Detective Marcus's unmarked car as he studied the yellowed missing person report. The photo of 2-year-old Alexandra Blackwood stared back at him, those same knowing eyes he'd seen in the hospital. The original investigating officer had noted it. Subject displays unusual cognitive awareness for age. In the back seat, Sarah, and the girl huddled under an emergency blanket. They'd found Marcus waiting at the hospital's service exit, engine running. "I'm probably throwing away my career," he muttered, pulling onto Lakeshore Drive. But something about this case never sat right. Sarah studied the girl's face in the glow of passing streetlights. "Tell me about the Blackwoods." Marcus handed back a thick file. "Thomas Blackwood built an empire in pharmaceutical research. When he died 6 years ago, everything went to his son James. 2 years later, James's daughter Alexandra vanished." He paused. "A month after that, James died in a car accident. The company went to his brother Richard." "Convenient," Sarah murmured, feeling the girl tense beside her. "The whole investigation felt wrong," Marcus continued. "Key evidence disappeared. Witnesses changed statements. I was a rookie then, but even I could see the case was being buried." The girl pulled out her notepad, writing quickly. "Uncle Richard has many friends." "So you are Alexandra," Marcus said softly, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. She nodded, then wrote, "He killed Dad. Made it look like accident." Sarah's breath caught. "Your uncle murdered your father?" Another note. "Dad found something bad in company files, had to protect me. That's why you were hiding," Sarah realized. "All these years." "Someone's been keeping her safe," Marcus added. "Teaching her. Those security details she drew, that's professional-level surveillance." "Awareness." Alexandra wrote again. "Mum's friend, John, military, taught me everything." She hesitated, then added, "Until they found him too." Sarah felt sick. This child had lost everyone who tried to protect her. No wonder she was so careful about trust. Marcus turned onto her. "Narrow street lined with abandoned warehouses. I've got a safe house. Off the books, we can—" "Detective." Sarah's voice was sharp. "That car, it's followed us through the last 3 turns." Alexandra was already writing, "Black SUV, government, plates." "Not real ones," Marcus swore softly. "Hold on." He yanked the wheel, cutting through an alley. The SUV accelerated behind them. "Call Rodriguez," he ordered, tossing Sarah his phone. "Speed dial 2. Tell her—" The back window exploded. Alexandra moved with practiced efficiency, pulling Sarah down below the seat line. Another shot cracked through the night. Marcus's shoulder bloomed red. The car swerved. "Sarah!" He fought to control the wheel. "Left pocket, USB drive, everything I have on the case. Take it!" The SUV rammed them from behind. Alexandra grabbed Sarah's hand, pointing urgently at the door. "We can't just—" Sarah started. "Go!" Marcus roared, spinning the wheel. Their car slammed sideways into the SUV, creating a gap. "Now!" They ran. Sarah's waitress shoes slipped on wet pavement. Alexandra pulled her into a shadow-filled doorway just as more shots rang out. Behind them, tires squealed and metal crunched. Alexandra produced a small flashlight, leading them through a maze of service corridors. The sound of fighting faded behind them. "How do you know this place?" Sarah gasped. Alexandra's flashlight beam found a faded sign. "Chicago Tribune Storage Facility, 1989. She wrote quickly, "Dad showed me. Emergency routes. Whole city." They emerged into a different alley. Alexandra oriented herself, then pointed. "East. Wait." Sarah caught her arm. "Marcus, we have to help him." Alexandra's face showed pain, but her writing was firm. "Can't." He knew. His choice. Like John. "Another protector sacrificing themselves for you," Sarah whispered. Alexandra's eyes filled with tears, the first real display of childhood emotion. Sarah had seen, she wrote, "So tired of people dying for me." Sarah knelt, meeting those 2 old eyes. "Listen to me. We're going to survive this. Together, no more sacrifices." A distant siren wailed. Alexandra tugged her arm, but Sarah held firm. "Promise me something," she said. "Start talking when you're ready. When you feel safe. I need to hear your voice." Alexandra studied her face for a long moment. Then, so softly, Sarah almost missed it. Okay. They ran through the rain-slicked streets of Chicago, two fugitives against a conspiracy. In Sarah's pocket, Marcus's USB drive held secrets worth killing for. And somewhere behind them, powerful people were realizing that their carefully buried past was about to be exhumed. Sarah thought of her apartment, her jobs, her simple life, all gone now. But as Alexandra's small hand gripped hers with fierce determination, she knew she'd made the right choice. Sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it rises up, demanding justice, and sometimes a single act of courage sets in motion a chain of events that will change everything. They ran on through the night, while behind them, Marcus's sacrifice bought them time, and ahead of them, the weight of destiny waited to be confronted. Dawn found them in a 24-hour laundromat, their clothes slowly tumbling dry. Sarah had used the last of her cash to buy them both clean second-hand outfits from an all-night thrift store. Alexandra sat perched on a plastic chair, watching the street through a gap in the faded advertisements coating the windows. Sarah studied the temporary custody papers Detective Rodriguez had quietly slipped her at the hospital, paperwork that now felt like both a shield and a target. Her name was listed as emergency guardian, a status that would buy them some legal protection, however temporary. "We need to talk about Marcus," Sarah said softly. Alexandra's hands moved to her notepad, but Sarah shook her head. "You promised. When you felt safe." The girl's fingers tightened on the pad. The laundromat's fluorescent lights flickered, casting strange shadows. Finally, in a voice rough from disuse, "He knew the risks." Sarah tried to hide her shock at hearing Alexandra's voice, clear, precise, with the vocabulary of someone far older. "How can you be so sure? Everyone who helps me knows." Alexandra's eyes remained fixed on the street. John explained it all, the company, the experiments, what Dad found out. She swallowed. Why they had to kill him. Sarah leaned forward. "What did your father discover?" Project Oracle. Alexandra finally turned to face her. "They were testing drugs on children, cognitive enhancement. Most died. Some changed." She touched her temple. "Like me." The dryer buzzed, making them both jump. Sarah retrieved their clothes, mind racing. "That's why you can process information differently." "Yes." Alexandra accepted her folded clothes. "But that's not what got Dad killed. He found out they were still doing it. Other facilities, other children." Sarah's phone vibrated, a text from Rodriguez. "Marcus alive, hospital, watched, stay away. We'll contact soon." Relief flooded through Sarah, followed by renewed fear. If they were watching Marcus, they'd be tracking Rodriguez too. Alexandra read the text over her shoulder. "We need to move. They'll track your phone." "Already done." Sarah pulled out the cheap burner phone she'd bought at a convenience store. "Your friend John taught you about security. My past. Let's say I learned some survival skills too." Alexandra's eyebrow raised slightly. "The papers called you a waitress." "I am now." Sarah managed a small smile. "But before that, I had a different life, one I left behind. Is that why you helped me? You recognized something in me?" "I helped you because you needed help." Sarah knelt before her. "The rest, maybe it's why I understood what I was seeing, why I knew to trust your instincts." Alexandra nodded slowly. "The social workers used to say I had an old soul." Her voice turned bitter. "They didn't know it was chemically induced." A police car rolled past outside. They both tensed, but it didn't slow down. "We need a plan," Sarah said. "Somewhere to go, something to do with Marcus's evidence." The USB drive. Alexandra's eyes lit up. Dad had a backup plan, a lawyer in Milwaukee, someone even Uncle Richard couldn't reach. She hesitated. "But first, there's something I need to show you." She pulled out a crumpled drawing. Not the family crest this time, but a detailed map of Chicago's northern suburbs, One location was marked with a small star. John's safe house, she explained. The one they never found. Everything we need is there. Money, documents, evidence. Her voice dropped. Dad's real will. Sarah studied the map. That's near the Botanic Gardens, at least an hour's drive. She checked their funds, barely enough for bus fare. We'll need help. No. Alexandra's voice was firm. No one else dies for me. Then we do it smart, careful. Sarah squeezed her hand. Together. Alexandra was quiet for a long moment. Then, why are you really doing this, risking everything for me? Sarah thought about her own past, the choices that had led her to a simpler life. Because 18 years ago, someone did the same for me, helped me escape a bad situation, gave me a chance at a new life. She met Alexandra's eyes. Sometimes the only way to repay that kind of debt is to pass it on. Morning sunlight began to seep through the grimy windows. Outside, Chicago was waking up, unaware of the drama unfolding in its shadows. Alexandra stood, shouldering her small backpack. We should go, she said. But Sarah, she struggled with the words. Thank you. For being different. For staying. Sarah gathered their few belongings, feeling the weight of the USB drive in her pocket. Always, she promised. And she meant it. They slipped out into the awakening city, two fugitives bound by circumstance and choice. Behind them, the laundromat's machines hummed on, washing away the physical traces of their presence. But the bond forged in those quiet hours would prove impossible to erase. Ahead lay danger, revelation, and the chance to expose a truth too long buried. But first, they had to survive the day, one step at a time. Together. Richard Blackwood's corner office overlooked Lake Michigan, but he wasn't admiring the view. Instead, his attention was fixed on the family tree displayed on his tablet, generations of Blackwoods mapped out in stark digital lines, each branch holding its own weight of ambition and secrets. How did we lose her? His voice was controlled, dangerous. The two security contractors stood stiffly at attention. The detective was unexpected, one ventured. And the woman, Mitchell, she's not what she seems. Clearly, Richard's finger traced the family tree to Alexandra's name. Find out everything about Sarah Mitchell. Everyone has a pressure point. Miles away, Sarah and Alexandra hurried through Union Station's morning crowd. They'd switched buses twice, trying to shake any tail, but paranoia prickled at Sarah's neck. Uncle Richard won't stop, Alexandra murmured, staying close. The company's about to launch Oracle's public phase. They can't risk exposure. Sarah guided them toward the Metra platforms. Tell me about the family, everything you remember. Alexandra's eyes grew distant. Grandfather Thomas built everything from nothing, but he had ideas about human potential. He started the experiments in secret. She swallowed. Dad was supposed to continue his work. Uncle Richard was the businessman, the public face. But your father had a conscience, Sarah finished. He found out the truth when I was 2, what they'd done to me, to the others. Alexandra's voice hardened. He tried to stop it. So they stopped him. A security guard passed too close. They both tensed, but he moved on. Your grandmother, Sarah, asked. She's still alive, right? I remember seeing her in the society pages. Alexandra nodded. Eleanor Blackwood, Queen of the North Shore Charity Circuit. Her laugh was bitter. She knows everything. Plays the grieving mother in public, but she's as deep in it as Richard. Sarah checked the departure board. We need to... Don't move! The voice behind them was soft, professional. Hand over the USB drive, and this ends quietly. Sarah felt Alexandra's hand slip into hers, squeezing once, a signal. They'd practiced this, in whispered plans between bus rides. It's in my jacket. Pocket? Sarah said, starting to reach. The man moved closer. Sarah caught a glimpse of him in a window reflection. Expensive suit, wireless earpiece. Company security, not a cop. In one fluid motion, Alexandra dropped and rolled as Sarah spun. years of buried training surfacing. Her elbow caught his throat. He staggered. Alexandra's small foot hooked his ankle. As he fell, Sarah grabbed his earpiece. They ran. "Platform 7, Alexandra called. The metro to Lake Forest was boarding. Behind them, radios crackled. More suits converged. They sprinted up the platform stairs, Sarah boosting Alexandra through the train's closing doors. They collapsed into seats as the train lurched forward. "You've had training," Alexandra said, studying Sarah with new eyes. Later, Sarah was listening to the captured earpiece. "Lost them at Union. Notify Lake Forest team. Grandmother wants them alive." Alexandra pulled out her notebook, sketching rapidly. The Blackwood family tree took shape, but with annotations she'd never shown the police: offshore accounts, shell companies, connections to defense contractors. "Dad documented everything," she said. "The whole corrupt network. It's all in his will, the real one, in John's safe house. Enough evidence to bring it all down." She pointed to a name. "Gregory Wells, family lawyer. He died in a robbery last year, but not before he made copies." Sarah thought of the fake Wells at the hospital. "They're trying to clean house. They know I'm the key." Alexandra's finger traced her own name. The only living proof of what Project Oracle did, what it can do. She met Sarah's eyes. "I can remember everything, Sarah. Every document, every conversation. Perfect recall. That's what the treatments did. That's why they want you back," Sarah realized. "You're not just evidence, you're the successful prototype. The next phase goes public in a month. Breakthrough cognitive enhancement therapy for children with learning disabilities." Alexandra's voice shook. "They'll hurt more kids, Sarah, like they hurt me." The train clattered north, carrying them toward both sanctuary and danger. Sarah studied the family tree, memorizing faces and connections. They'd need every advantage. "Your grandmother," she said slowly. "She's expecting us to come for the evidence." But not for her. Alexandra's eyes widened. "The gala, tomorrow night. She always hosts the summer benefit for children's charities." Her laugh was hollow. "The irony. Every security asset will be watching the safe house," Sarah mused, "while the family puts on a show of normalcy. You want to crash my grandmother's party?" Alexandra almost smiled. "That's crazy. Sometimes crazy is smart. Hit them where they feel safe." Sarah squeezed her hand. "But only if you're ready. This is your fight. I'm just backup." Alexandra stared at the family tree for a long moment. Then deliberately she ripped it in half, separating her branch from the rest. "I'm ready," she said. "They took my father, my childhood, but they don't get to take my future." The train rushed on toward Lake Forest, where old money bought silence and power cast long shadows. In Sarah's pocket, Marcus's USB drive held truth like a digital bomb, and beside her sat a child who'd been turned into a weapon, but one that was about to turn on its creators. The game was changing. The hunters were about to become the hunted. The safe house wasn't what Sarah expected. From the street, it looked like any other Lake Forest guest house, a modest structure behind a larger mansion, probably originally meant for household staff. The actual owners were in Europe, Alexandra had explained. John had been thorough in choosing his hideout. An encrypted email on Sarah's burner phone confirmed what they already suspected. "Watch out! They have people everywhere. Marcus stable but monitored. Be careful who you trust." "Rodriguez is trying to help," Sarah murmured. "But she's limited in what she can do." Alexandra led them through a neighbor's garden, following a path that avoided security cameras. "John mapped everything, showed me all the blind spots." Her voice caught. He knew he might not always be here. The safe house's security system was elegant in its simplicity. No electronic signals to hack, just old-school mechanical triggers that Alexandra navigated with practiced ease. Inside, the space was sparse but efficient. One wall held monitors showing feeds from hidden cameras covering the approach routes. "John was military intelligence before he went private," Alexandra explained, heading to a concealed panel. "He taught me everything, said knowledge was the best defense. Her small fingers found the hidden latch. "The evidence is in here." The panel slid aside, revealing a small safe. Alexandra spun the dial with confidence. Right 23, left 7, right 19. "Dad's birthday," she said softly. John's way of keeping him close. Inside lay a laptop, files, and a sealed envelope marked "Last Will and Testament of James Blackwood." But what caught Sarah's attention was a USB drive labeled with a single word: Oracle. "Is that everything?" Alexandra confirmed. "Clinical trials, test subjects, financial records." She swallowed hard. "Death certificates." Sarah compared it to Marcus's drive. "We should." A red light flashed on the security console. Alexandra moved with practiced efficiency, bringing up the camera feeds. 3 SUVs were parking down the street. "Company security," she said grimly. "They're earlier than I expected." Sarah quickly photographed key documents with her burner phone. "Time to go." "Wait." Alexandra grabbed the laptop and a small go bag from under a floorboard. "Emergency supplies." John thought of everything. The sound of car doors slamming carried through the windows. Alexandra hesitated, then pulled out one final item, a child's backpack with a subtle armored lining. "From my first day on the run," she said quietly. "John gave it to me. Said sometimes the best armor looks harmless." Voices approached outside. Sarah checked the feeds. They were surrounding the house. "Back exit," she whispered. Alexandra shook her head. "They'll expect that. We need to think like they don't think we'll think." Sarah raised an eyebrow at the wordplay, but understood the strategy. "Front door? Better." Alexandra pointed to the ceiling. "Roof access. The properties connect through the old servants' passages. My great-grandfather built them during Prohibition." They moved silently upward as boots crunched on gravel outside. Through the windows, Sarah caught glimpses of tactical gear and communications equipment. This wasn't just security. This was a serious retrieval team. On the roof, Alexandra led them to what looked like an old ventilation shaft. "It connects to the main house. They won't expect us to go deeper into the estate." Sarah hesitated. "How well do you know these passages?" "I memorized the blueprints." Alexandra's voice held absolute certainty. "Trust me, the shaft was tight but navigable." As they crawled through decades of history, Sarah heard muffled voices below. "Clear! Check the panic room." No sign of recent occupation. Alexandra smiled slightly. "John taught me how to live somewhere without leaving traces. He called it ghosting." They emerged in a dusty attic space. Alexandra oriented herself quickly. 3 houses over. "We can—" The floor creaked behind them. Sarah spun, instinctively pushing Alexandra behind her. An elderly man stood in the shadows, holding a gardening trowel like a weapon. "Please," he whispered. "Don't be afraid. I was friends with John." Alexandra peered around Sarah. "Mr. Chen? The gardener?" He nodded. "John told me to watch for you. Said someday you might need help." He gestured to a hidden door. "Service stairs. They lead to the garage. My car is there." Sarah studied him carefully. "Why help us?" "Because," his voice cracked, "my granddaughter was in the first Oracle trials. She didn't survive." Alexandra touched his arm gently. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be successful." He pressed a key into her hand. "End this. For all of them." Shouts echoed from the street. They were expanding the search perimeter. Mr. Chen straightened. "Go. I'll lead them away from the garage." "They'll know you helped us," Sarah warned. "I'm 83 years old." He smiled grimly. "What can they do to me that time won't do first?" They hurried down the narrow stairs as Mr. Chen's voice carried from above. "Hello? Is someone up here? I heard noises." The garage was cool and dark. A modest Honda Civic sat waiting, its beige paint perfect for blending in. As they pulled out onto the service road, Sarah glimpsed security teams rushing toward the attic. "Another ally sacrificed," Alexandra said quietly. "No." Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "Another hero choosing to fight back. There's a difference." They drove carefully through Lake Forest's manicured streets, looking like nothing more than a parent and child running errands. In the back seat, the evidence that could destroy Project Oracle lay hidden in a child's armored backpack. Alexandra hugged the backpack close. The gala's tomorrow night. Yes, grandmother will have doubled security. Probably. We could die. Sarah glanced at her. We could live and make sure no other children suffer what you did. Alexandra nodded slowly. John would say, the mission is what matters. John, Sarah said gently, would say you matter more. They drove on toward Chicago, leaving the safe house and its secrets behind. Ahead lay a glittering gala where power and corruption wore elegant masks. But now they had weapons of their own, truth documented in digital files, and the unshakable bond between a woman who'd found her purpose and a child who'd found her. Protector, the real war was about to begin. In a small motel room just outside Chicago, Sarah stared at her sealed juvenile record displayed on John's laptop screen. Alexandra had insisted on hacking into the courthouse database. Dad taught me about digital forensics, and now Sarah's past lay exposed in stark bureaucratic language. Case file. Sarah Mitchell, formerly Sarah Winters. Age at time of incident. 16 charge. Breaking and entering industrial espionage. Location. Blackwood Pharmaceutical Research Facility. Status. Sealed by court order. You tried to expose them, Alexandra whispered. 18 years ago. Sarah's hands shook slightly. I was just a kid. My mother was a lab technician there. She discovered something wrong with the early trials. When she threatened to go public, they arranged an accident. Alexandra's eyes never left the screen as she scrolled through the documents. The judge who sealed your case. He's on the list of Oracle conspirators from Dad's files. They buried it. Gave me a choice, disappear with a new identity or face adult charges. Sarah's laugh was bitter. I chose survival, been running ever since. Until now. Alexandra's voice held no judgment. Until me, until you. Sarah touched the screen where her mother's name appeared in the incident report. Maybe this was always where I was heading, a chance to finish what she started. A notification popped up on the laptop, Detective Rodriguez using their secure channel. Marcus awake, talking, says check the family council records from 2019. Alexandra's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up files from her father's archive. The year Dad died, when everything changed. The council meeting minutes appeared, dense with corporate language. But there, buried in subsection C, maternal rights terminated due to mental instability. All decisions regarding minor child AB to be made by acting CEO pending formal guardianship arrangement. They declared your mother unfit, Sarah realized. Right after your father's death. Mom, Alexandra's voice caught. They said she had a breakdown, that she tried to... She couldn't finish. Sarah studied the document. Where is she now? Lakewood Psychiatric Center. I tried to visit once, but Uncle Richard has her heavily guarded. Alexandra's hands clenched. She's not crazy. She knows the truth. A piece clicked in Sarah's mind. That's why you were in that house. You were trying to reach her. Alexandra nodded. Lakewood is just 2 blocks from there. I've been watching, planning, but the fire... She looked down. I got sloppy. Let them spot me. Or maybe it was meant to happen. Sarah touched her shoulder. Maybe you needed a partner. Another. Message from Rodriguez. Background check on Sem ordered by Blackwood Security. They'll find the connection soon. They'll know why you're helping me, Alexandra said, that it's personal. Good. Sarah's voice hardened. Let them know I'm not some random waitress. Let them remember the last time they tried to bury the truth. Alexandra pulled up the gala blueprints. Grandmother's party tomorrow night. All the key players will be there, including Richard. He never misses a chance to play benevolent CEO. Alexandra's tone dripped contempt. They're announcing a new children's health initiative, more Oracle experiments wrapped in charity. Sarah studied the plans. Security? Heavy, but Alexandra highlighted a section. The catering entrance. Staff will be overwhelmed. And look who has the contract. Sarah zoomed in on the logo. Palmer's Dining Services. She smiled. My current employer. Your manager already reported you missing. Perfect cover for a replacement to show up. Alexandra's eyes gleamed. John taught me about exploiting predictable human behavior, while Richard's security is watching for a frontal assault. Sarah nodded. We go in through the kitchen. We? Alexandra raised an eyebrow. It's too dangerous for both. Together, Sarah cut her off. Remember, no more sacrifices. Alexandra was quiet for a moment. Then, Mom's doctor will be there, Dr. Helen Fraser. She oversees all the special patients. At Lakewood, the ones who know too much? Yes. Alexandra pulled up the doctor's photo. She reports directly to Uncle Richard. If we can get to her files, we can prove your mother was silenced. Sarah squeezed her hand. We'll make it right. All of it. Outside, Chicago's lights glittered like false stars. Tomorrow those lights would shine on a gathering of the powerful, the corrupt, the untouchable. But in this small room, two fugitives, linked by fate, justice, and shared pain, prepared to shatter their untouchable world. Sarah looked at her juvenile record one last time before closing the file. The scared 16-year-old girl in that report had run away, but the woman she'd become was done running. Tomorrow the hunters would learn what it meant to be hunted. The kitchen of the Blackwood estate hummed with controlled chaos. Sarah moved through the space in her borrowed Palmer's uniform, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres while scanning faces. Security camera footage from the service entrance played on a loop, Alexandra's handiwork ensuring no one would notice the extra server who hadn't checked in. Southwest hallway clear, Alexandra's voice whispered through Sarah's concealed earpiece. She'd found a perfect hiding spot in the building's mechanical room, surrounded by monitors showing the security feeds. She'd hacked. Dr. Fraser just arrived. She's heading to the main ballroom. Sarah adjusted her tray, remembering the security camera footage they'd studied. There she was, Dr. Helen Fraser, architect of false diagnoses and keeper of secrets, gliding through the crowd in expensive silk, a burst of static in her ear. Wait, Alexandra's voice sharpened. Something's wrong. The guard rotation is off. Mitchell. The voice behind her was familiar. Sarah turned to find Detective Marcus, his arm in a sling, wearing a security uniform. His eyes held warning, rather than threat. We need to talk. Sarah let him guide her into a quiet alcove, her mind racing. How had he found them? Why was he here? Rodriguez sent me, he said softly. We found a bug in her office. They know you're coming. How? Think about it. The catering entrance? Too obvious. His good hand gripped her arm. Richard Blackwood doesn't just want the evidence. He wants Alexandra to see what happens to people who help her. He's going to make an example. The lights went out. In her ear. Alexandra's voice was tight with fear. Sarah, they're in the system. I've lost the feeds. Emergency lights cast red shadows through the hallways. Through the windows, Sarah saw tactical teams moving across the grounds. It's not just company. Security, Marcus warned. He brought in professionals, ex-military. Sarah's mind raced. Alexandra, got to get to the mechanical room. Marcus nodded. But they'll expect that. They're herding us, using her against... A new voice cut through their earpieces. My dear Alexandra. Richard Blackwood's smooth tones dripped with false concern. Did you really think we wouldn't be prepared? That we hadn't planned for this since the moment you escaped? Sarah's blood ran cold as he continued. You have your father's intelligence, but also his unfortunate moral weakness. Caring about people. It makes you vulnerable. Through the earpiece, Sarah heard Alexandra's quick breathing. Then, impossibly, the girl laughed. No, Uncle Richard, she said clearly. You're the one who doesn't understand. I knew you'd be ready for us, just like I knew you'd get overconfident. Sarah felt the floor vibrate slightly. In the ballroom, Crystal glasses began to sing. John taught me about tactical thinking, Alexandra continued. But Dad, he taught me about contingencies, about backup plans. The vibration grew stronger. Guests were beginning to murmur nervously. You infiltrated my security system. Richard's voice held a slight tremor now. Impressive, but wrong again. Alexandra's voice was steel. I didn't just get into your security. I got into everything. Environmental controls, structural systems. Did you know this house has a deep basement? Original foundation from 1907. The groundwater tables have been shifting for decades. The floor shuddered. A crack appeared in the marble tile. You wouldn't, Richard breathed. You'll bring down the whole— No, Alexandra cut him off. Just the East Wing, where you're keeping all your servers, all the Oracle data. 18 years of evidence about to be accidentally destroyed by structural failure, unless— Sarah couldn't help smiling. The girl was giving them a show, playing on Richard's greatest fear, loss of control. Terms, he snapped. Simple ones. Dr. Fraser's files on my mother, the real ones. Now, before your foundation shifts any further. Through the earpiece, Sarah heard rapid typing. Downloading, Alexandra reported privately to her. But Sarah, there's something else. Something about your mother, too. They're connected. The lights blazed back on. In the sudden brightness, Sarah saw Marcus's expression change. His hand moved toward his weapon. I'm sorry, he said softly. They have my daughter. Sarah's heart sank. Marcus, drop the act, detective. A new voice purred. Dr. Fraser stepped into view, elegant and deadly. Sarah and I are old friends, aren't we? Her mother was one of my first patients. Security teams materialized at both ends of the hallway. In her ear, Alexandra's typing became more frantic. Sarah, the files. Your mother wasn't just a whistleblower. She was part of the original Oracle team. They didn't silence her. They used her as the first adult test subject. Sarah's world tilted. What? Enough? Richard's voice boomed through the house speakers. Alexandra, my dear niece, you've played this well, but now it's time to learn what happens when you challenge your elders. The security teams raised their weapons. Marcus wouldn't meet Sarah's eyes. Then Alexandra's voice came again, not through the earpiece, but through the house system. No, Uncle Richard, it's time for you to learn what happens when you underestimate your children. The floor buckled. Alarms blared. And in the chaos that followed, Sarah realized that their careful plan had just shattered, but maybe that had been the real plan all along. Sometimes you had to break everything to build something new. The original Project Oracle files filled the screen of Alexandra's laptop, their clinical language masking horrors in bureaucratic efficiency. Sarah read her mother's name again. Subject 01A, Catherine Winters, first successful adult cognitive enhancement trial. They were in the estate's wine cellar, the only part of the building Alexandra had guaranteed wouldn't collapse. Above them, chaos reigned as security teams evacuated guests from the compromised East Wing. They didn't kill her, Sarah whispered. They experimented on her, made her like me. Alexandra's voice was gentle, but adult subjects responded differently. The changes were more unstable, unpredictable. Sarah's hands shook as she scrolled through her mother's file. That's why they committed her, not to silence her, but to study her. Same place they're keeping my mom. Alexandra pulled up another document, the original kidnapping plan. Look at the authorization signature. Sarah stared at the elegant handwriting. Catherine Winters. No, she breathed. She wouldn't. The enhancements affected her mind, Alexandra explained. Made her brilliant, but broken. Richard used her to plan my kidnapping. Her enhanced intelligence made the perfect criminal mastermind. Why? What could be worth? Because of what I can do. Alexandra's eyes held ancient wisdom. The child trials were more stable. We developed abilities they didn't expect. Perfect. Recall, yes, but also pattern recognition beyond normal human capacity, the ability to process and synthesize information in ways that... She touched her temple. I can see connections no one else can. Predict outcomes. Understand systems intuitively. You're not just evidence, Sarah realized. You're proof of concept. The next phase isn't about helping children with learning disabilities. Alexandra's voice hardened. It's about creating a generation of enhanced humans, controlled from birth, loyal to the company, the perfect corporate workforce. Heavy boots sounded on the stairs. They had minutes at most. Your mother's still in there, Alexandra said quickly. The real her. Fighting. That's why she left clues in the kidnapping plan, things she knew I'd recognize when I was older. She was helping me, in her own broken way. Sarah's mind raced. The house where I found you, near Lakewood, that wasn't just about getting to your mother, was it? Alexandra shook her head. Catherine's been reaching out through the hospital network, sending messages, warning me about Richard's plans. The fire... She swallowed. The fire was her signal. She knew you'd come. She engineered our meeting. The cellar door burst open. Richard Blackwood entered first, flanked by guards. Dr. Fraser glided in behind him. How touching, Richard smiled. A family reunion of sorts. It's over, Richard. Sarah stood, shielding Alexandra. We have everything. The original trials, the kidnapping, the murders. Do you really think evidence matters? He laughed. We own the judges, the regulators, the media. Tomorrow's headline will read, Tragic Accident at Charity Gala. A disturbed former employee, a sad case of inherited mental illness. My mother. Sarah's voice shook with rage. What you did to her. We gave her purpose. Dr. Fraser cut in. She was a nobody. A lab tech with a teenage daughter. We made her extraordinary. You made her a weapon. Alexandra stepped forward. Like you tried to make me, but you made a mistake. Richard raised an eyebrow. Oh? You taught us too well. To see patterns. To understand systems. Alexandra's smile was dangerous. To know that every system has a weak point. She pressed a key on the laptop. Throughout the house, speakers crackled to life. Catherine Winters, voice clear and sane, filled the air. My name is Catherine Winters. I'm recording this message from Lakewood Psychiatric Center, where I've been held against my will for 18 years. What I'm about to tell you about Project Oracle and the Blackwood Corporation. Richard lunged for the laptop, but Sarah was faster. Years of buried training surfaced as she knocked him back. That's broadcasting live to every major news outlet. Alexandra said calmly, along with all the evidence, every server, every backup. And look at your phone, Uncle Richard. Your stock price is already falling. Dr. Fraser pulled out a syringe. This can still be contained. Helen, the new voice from the stairs made them all turn. Eleanor Blackwood, family matriarch, descended like an avenging angel. Step away from my granddaughter. Mother, Richard started. But her glare silenced him. Enough. Eleanor's voice could have frozen flame. You think I didn't know? That I didn't watch you destroy this family with your ambition? She turned to Alexandra. I failed your father. I won't fail you. Security teams poured in, but these wore FBI jackets. Detective Rodriguez appeared, gun trained on Dr. Fraser. The family council has voted, Eleanor announced. Richard is relieved of his position. Project Oracle ends today. As agents moved to secure the suspects, Sarah felt Alexandra slip her hand into hers. It's not over, the girl whispered. There are other sites, other children. I know. Sarah squeezed her hand. But now we're not fighting alone. Above them, Catherine's voice continued her testimony, each word another nail in Project Oracle's coffin. The truth, so long buried, was finally rising, and in a cellar beneath a crumbling mansion, a woman and a child who had both been weapons forged in darkness chose to become something else, a light to illuminate the shadows. The corporate takeover. Documents sprawled across Eleanor Blackwood's mahogany desk, each page another piece of Richard's dismantling. Dawn light filtered through the study's stained glass, casting colored shadows on Alexandra's face as she reviewed the papers with unsettling precision. 3 shell companies, she noted, all linking back to offshore accounts in the Caymans. Classic Richard, hiding Oracle funding in plain sight. Sarah watched her daughter, and the word felt right now, after everything, track connections. No adult would see. 2 days had passed since the gala, and the world was still reeling from Catherine Winter's testimony. The stock's down 60%, Eleanor reported, setting aside her tablet. The board is in chaos, but Richard's loyalists are already moving to contain the damage. They'll claim it was a rogue operation, Sarah said. Pin everything on Richard and Dr. Fraser, preserve the company's core, while the other sites continue operating. Alexandra's voice was steel. There are 7 of them, hidden behind legitimate research facilities. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. You're certain? Mom's intel was clear. Sarah still struggled with the word. Her mother was awake now, healing, but the road ahead was long. The enhancement protocols were distributed. Richard made sure no one person had the full picture. Except me. Alexandra tapped her temple. I can see all the pieces now. The shell companies, the funding patterns, the staff transfers. She spread out a series of documents. Look, every facility follows the same construction blueprint: specialized ventilation systems, reinforced security, unusual power requirements. My God, Eleanor breathed. How many children? Currently, 43. Alexandra's clinical tone couldn't quite hide her pain. Average age 8. They're getting younger with each trial. Sarah studied the facility locations: Singapore, Dubai, São Paulo. International jurisdiction makes prosecution nearly impossible. They won't see us coming. Alexandra's smile was fierce. Richard thought he was so clever, building his hidden empire, but he taught me too well. Every system has a weakness, and you can see them all, Eleanor finished. She looked years older than she had at the gala. I should have stopped this years ago, when James first raised concerns. You're helping now, Sarah said firmly. That's what matters. A knock at the door. Detective Rodriguez entered, looking grimmer than usual. Richard's talking, she reported. Cutting deals. He's willing to testify about the original Oracle trials in exchange for immunity on the newer sites. Of course he is. Alexandra's laugh was bitter. He knows those facilities are legally untouchable. Different countries, different laws, but not untouchable to us, Sarah said quietly. They all looked at her. Think about it. We have Eleanor's resources, Rodriguez's law enforcement connections, my particular skills. She met Alexandra's eyes. And we have you. Your ability to see the patterns, predict their moves. A task. A force, Rodriguez mused. Off the books. More than that. Eleanor stood, suddenly energized. A completely deniable operation to dismantle these sites, save those children. She smiled thinly. The famous Blackwood philanthropy, applied more directly. Alexandra was already moving, pulling up building schematics on her laptop. Singapore first. Their security protocols are based on Richard's original designs. I know every flaw. We'll need help, Sarah cautioned. People we can trust. Marcus, Rodriguez suggested. Now that his daughter's safe, he's fully on board. And I know others, good cops who want to make this right. John had a network too, Alexandra added. People who helped us stay hidden. They've been waiting for a chance to fight back. Eleanor lifted a crystal decanter. A toast, then, to justice, served in the shadows. But Sarah raised her hand. Wait, Alexandra, are you sure about this? You've already been through so much. The girl who had been through too much, seen too much, survived too much, met her gaze steadily. Those children in those facilities? They're me. 4 years ago. Alone. Afraid. being turned into weapons. Her voice strengthened. But I had John to teach me, Dad to leave me clues, and now I have you. She took Sarah's hand. They deserve the same chance I got, a chance to be children again. Sarah squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of the choice. The danger ahead, the lives at stake. Together, she said softly. Together, Alexandra echoed. They all raised their glasses as the morning sun blazed through the stained glass, painting them in light and shadow. A former experimental subject turned protector, a grandmother seeking redemption, a detective, choosing justice over law, and a child who had become so much more. Project Oracle had tried to create perfect weapons. Instead, they had created their own destruction. The counter-move was beginning. The Singapore facility's security feed played across Alexandra's laptop, captured by the hidden camera she'd helped Marcus plant during his official inspection. Dr. Chen Wei, the site director, was in full damage control mode following the Chicago scandal. Our work here is entirely legitimate, he assured the regulatory committee. Project Oracle was Richard Blackwood's personal initiative. We have no connection to those unfortunate events. Sarah, watching from their hotel room 6 blocks away, admired his performance. He's good. He's lying, Alexandra said flatly. Watch his left hand when he mentions Oracle, microtremors, classic stress response. She typed rapidly, synchronizing multiple video angles. Also, he's wearing a new watch. Singapore police surveillance picked up a wire transfer to his Macau account 2 days ago. Payoff to maintain the cover story? Rodriguez asked through their secure line. More likely insurance, Eleanor added from Chicago. Richard made sure everyone was compromised. Mutual assured destruction. Alexandra nodded, but he didn't count on me remembering everything. Every file, every conversation. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. There. Second sub-basement. The camera caught it for just a frame. She enhanced the image, a child's drawing on a bulletin board, featuring the same distinctive pattern Sarah had seen in the hospital. The family crest, Sarah breathed. They're teaching them loyalty to the brand, conditioning them from the start. 8 subjects currently in treatment, Alexandra reported, ages 6 to 10. Their public records show them enrolled in an advanced learning program. Her voice cracked slightly. Just like I was. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. Not for much. Longer. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While Dr. Chen focused on convincing regulators that his facility was clean, they would trigger a very specific type of crisis, one that would force an evacuation directly into the waiting arms of legitimate authorities. Marcus! Rodriguez's voice came through their comms. Status? In position. The detective posing as a safety inspector was already inside. Maintenance access confirmed. Ready when you are. Alexandra's hands poised over her laptop. Remember, once I initiate the sequence, we have exactly 12 minutes before their backup systems engage. Sarah checked her borrowed maintenance uniform. Security patrol. Changing shift in 3 minutes. Standard procedure puts them on the west side of the building. Alexandra pulled up the guard rotation schedule. They're creatures of habit, just like Richard taught them to be. Predictable, Sarah smiled. Their weakness. Eleanor? Rodriguez asked. Press release ready to go, the Blackwood matriarch confirmed. The moment you have the children, I announce our emergency investigation into all overseas facilities. The stock will tank, but some things matter more than money, Alexandra finished softly. Sarah studied her daughter's face, seeing the weight of memory there. You don't have to go in. You can run this from here. No. Alexandra stood, smoothing her own maintenance uniform. They need to see me, need to know they're not alone. She managed a small smile. Besides, I promised. Together, Sarah nodded, throat tight. Together, the next 10 minutes unfolded with precision. They entered through the loading dock during shift change. Their forged credentials perfect. Alexandra's knowledge of the building systems got them past 3 security checkpoints. In the second sub-basement, Marcus was waiting. Charges set, he reported. Non-explosive, just like you specified. When they go, the security system will read it as a structural failure. Alexandra nodded. They built these facilities to Richard's standards. All his fail-safes, all his escape routes. She smiled grimly. All his flaws. She reached for her laptop, but Sarah caught her hand. Wait, once we start this, there's no going back. We'll be declared terrorists, criminals. We already are. Alexandra's voice was steel. The only difference is, now we get to choose why. She pressed enter. Deep in the facility's guts, carefully placed charges created precise vibrations. Sensors registered critical structural stress. Alarms blared. Attention. All personnel, immediate evacuation required. This is not a drill. Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the PA system, barely masking his panic. Through the security feeds, they watched the carefully orchestrated chaos unfold. Staff hurried to secure sensitive materials, while guards executed their practiced evacuation. Protocols. But in the secured ward, 8 children looked up as Sarah and Alexandra entered, wearing maintenance uniforms and carrying hope. "Hi," Alexandra said softly. "I'm like you, and we're here to take you home." The oldest boy studied her. "They said we're special, that normal people wouldn't understand." "You are special," Sarah said, "but what they're doing is wrong." "How do we know we can trust you?" a small girl asked. Alexandra knelt, drawing the Blackwood crest with precise strokes. Then, deliberately, she added the scar across the lion's face, the secret mark of resistance. The children's eyes widened. "Because..." Alexandra said, "I was you, 4 years ago, and now I'm free." Alarms continued to wail as they led the children through maintenance corridors Alexandra had memorized from stolen blueprints. Above them, Dr. Chen was discovering that his secure files had been transmitted to multiple law enforcement agencies. His insurance policy was worthless now. They emerged into Singapore's hot night just as Eleanor's press release hit the global news wires. The Blackwood Corporation's stock would plummet again, but 8 children were about to rediscover what freedom meant. It was only the beginning. The bank records scrolled across Alexandra's screen in an endless stream of transactions, each one a thread in a web of corruption. They were back in Chicago, holed up in Eleanor's Lake Forest mansion, while the fallout from Singapore spread like ripples in a poisoned pond. 6 more transfers, Alexandra reported, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. All to accounts linked. To Project Oracle staff at other facilities. They're trying to buy silence. Sarah studied the numbers. "Those are severance packages?" "No." Alexandra's voice was grim. "Those are bribes. Look at the timing. Each transfer came exactly 6 hours after our Singapore operation. They're shoring up loyalty, making sure no one talks." She highlighted a pattern. But they made a mistake. The money's moving through the same channels Richard used. Eleanor entered, carrying fresh intelligence from her banking contacts. Dubai facility's gone dark. They're evacuating test subjects to a backup location. They're scared, Sarah realized. Singapore proved they're vulnerable. More than that, Alexandra pulled up a series of emails they'd intercepted. They don't know how we did it, how we got past their security, knew their protocols. She allowed herself a small smile. They haven't figured out that they created their own destruction, that everything they put in my head is now being used against them. The door opened and Rodriguez entered with Marcus. Both looked exhausted but satisfied. Singapore police just finished processing the facility, Rodriguez reported. Dr. Chen's singing like a bird, trying to save himself. His testimony implicates at least 3 other site directors. And the children, Sarah asked, safe, being reunited with their families. Marcus smiled. The cover story about an advanced learning program is falling apart. Parents are asking questions they should have asked years ago. Alexandra's hands stilled on the keyboard. They'll move the others, change protocols, make them harder to find. Let them, Eleanor said firmly. Every move they make costs money, leaves traces. And now, she gestured to the bank records, now we can follow the money. A notification popped up on Alexandra's screen. Another encrypted message from Catherine Winters, growing stronger daily in her recovery. Mum says they're calling an emergency board meeting. Sarah read over her daughter's shoulder, trying to salvage what's left of the company's reputation. Perfect. Alexandra's smile was predatory. Because I just found something interesting in the Dubai transfer records. Something that proves the board knew about Oracle all along. She brought up a document. Funding authorizations for cognitive enhancement research. Signed by every board. Remember, they can't claim it was just Richard anymore, she said. They were all complicit, all profiting. And now they're trapped, Eleanor added. If they shut down Oracle completely, they lose their investment. If they continue, we expose them one facility at a time. Speaking of exposure, Rodriguez held up her phone, displaying a news alert. The headline read, Blackwood corruption, more whistleblowers come forward. Sarah scanned the article. Oracle staff are starting to talk. The bribes aren't working because they see us winning, Alexandra said quietly. John taught me about momentum in combat, how one victory can change everything. Her voice caught slightly. He'd be proud of what we're doing. Sarah squeezed her shoulder, remembering the scared girl from the burning house. Now here she was, dismantling a multinational conspiracy with the same precision they'd tried to program into her. A secure message flashed. Dubai's backup site located. Alexandra was already pulling up building schematics, finding the flaws, planning the next rescue. They're adapting, she warned, learning from Singapore. The next one will be harder. Good, Sarah said firmly. So are we. Eleanor poured them all coffee. Real coffee, not the stale breakroom kind Sarah had known for so many years. To the next phase, then, making them understand that every child they took, every family they destroyed, comes with a price. Alexandra's fingers flew across the keyboard, following money trails, tracking communications, seeing the patterns only she could see. On her screen, the web of Oracle's power was unraveling, thread by thread. They thought they could control us, she said. Softly, use us, own us. Her eyes met Sarah's. They never understood that what they gave us made us stronger than they could imagine. Outside, summer rain fell on Lake Forest's manicured lawns. Somewhere in Dubai, children waited for rescue, not yet knowing that hope was coming. And in this room, a family forged in fire and pain planned their next strike. The tables weren't just turning, they were about to be completely overturned. The Dubai facility rose from the desert like a modern fortress, all gleaming glass and sophisticated security. But Alexandra saw past the surface to the fatal flaws beneath. The same ones she'd been trained to recognize, written into the building's DNA by Richard's arrogance. Their last stand, she murmured, studying the live feed from their surveillance position. They've consolidated everything here. All the remaining subjects, all the research. Sarah checked her tactical gear one last time. After Singapore, they'd upgraded. Eleanor's resources finally being put to proper use. How many children? 15. Alexandra's voice held controlled rage. Plus 3 adult subjects. They're accelerating the trials, trying to salvage what they can of the program. Marcus's voice crackled through their comms. Perimeter teams in position. Local authorities are distracted by some convenient problems elsewhere in the city. Eleanor's money at work, Rodriguez added from her command post. Amazing how many minor emergencies can pop up all at once. Sarah studied her daughter's face in the dim light of their observation post. You're sure about this plan? It's risky. It's insane, Alexandra corrected with a slight smile. Which is why it'll work. They're expecting another Singapore-style raid, looking for structural attacks, system breaches. She held up an elegant invitation. They're not expecting us to walk in the front door. The invitation was impeccable. a charity gala celebrating the facility's public face as a specialized learning center. Alexandra had found it in the director's encrypted emails, a last-ditch attempt to maintain their philanthropic image. Half the board will be there, Sarah noted, along with potential investors. Perfect. Alexandra's smile turned predatory. Because I found something in the Dubai servers. Something even Richard didn't know about. She pulled up an old file, Thomas Blackwood's original will. Grandfather left a failsafe. If the company ever engaged in unethical experimentation, control reverts to a blind trust. Managed by the children of any victims, Sarah finished. Understanding dawning. You're not just his granddaughter, you're legally the majority shareholder. Alexandra stood, smoothing her expensive gala dress. The minute I walk in there and prove my identity, everything changes. Sarah checked her own evening wear, specially tailored to conceal body armor and weapons. They'll try to stop you? Of course. Alexandra touched the hidden pocket, holding a USB drive. That's why we let them think this is just another rescue mission. Let them focus on protecting the facility while we take the whole company. She looked so grown up in that moment. Not quite a child anymore, but not yet an adult. Someone forged in unique fire. Mom, she said softly, using the word that still made Sarah's heart skip. Whatever happens in there, thank you for seeing me, the real me. Sarah pulled her into a fierce hug. Always. The gala was in full swing when they arrived, Dubai's elite mingling with Blackwood executives. Their covers were perfect. A minor European investor and her precocious daughter, crafted by Eleanor's connections. Alexandra played her role flawlessly, charming executives with practiced ease, while her enhanced mind catalogued weaknesses, exits, security patterns. Sarah drifted through the crowd, marking faces from Project Oracle's files, noting who looked nervous. Package is moving, Marcus reported through their nearly invisible earpieces. Loading dock, west side. They were trying to smuggle out the test subjects during the party, exactly as Alexandra had predicted. Rodriguez? Sarah sub-vocalized. Teams. In position. No one leaves with those kids. Alexandra caught Sarah's eye across the room and nodded slightly. Time. She walked to the small stage where the facility director was preparing to give his speech. Sarah tensed, hands near her concealed weapons. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexandra's clear voice carried through the ballroom. I apologize for interrupting, but I'm afraid this evening's program is about to change. The director froze. Security teams shifted uneasily. My name is Alexandra Blackwood, she continued, and I hold controlling interest in this company through the Thomas Blackwood Ethical Oversight Trust. Chaos erupted. Guards moved in, but found themselves blocked by other guards. John's old military. Contacts carefully positioned. The director lunged for a panic button, but discovered his access codes had been changed. Alexandra held up the USB drive. This contains my DNA test results, legal documentation, and proof of what's been happening in this facility. It's being broadcast to every major news organization right now. Sarah moved to her side as shocked executives began receiving phone alerts, their stocks plummeting, their secrets exposed. Did you really think, Alexandra's voice was steel, that you could experiment on children and never face consequences? That we would stay quiet forever? The facility director found his voice. Security! Take her into custody. Your security. Works for me now, Alexandra cut him off. Check your phones, ladies and gentlemen. While you were enjoying champagne, control of this company was legally transferred to the trust, and I'm shutting it all down. Through their earpieces, Rodriguez reported, children secured, medical teams standing by. Alexandra's next words were, for the trapped executives. But Sarah heard the wounded child beneath them. You tried to make us weapons. Instead, you gave us the power to destroy you. Poetic, isn't it? The Dubai police were arriving. The real ones this time. Eleanor's influence ensured they had all the evidence needed for arrests. It was over, or rather it was beginning. The rebuilding, the healing, the long process of making things right. Sarah took her daughter's hand as their opponents were led away in handcuffs. Together, they had turned Project Oracle's weapons back on their creators. And somewhere, Sarah knew John was smiling. The adoption papers sat unsigned on Eleanor's desk, their legal language stark and transformative. Sarah read them for the 10th time, each word carrying the weight of permanence, full legal guardianship and parental rights. Alexandra sat in the window seat of the study, watching fall leaves dance across the lawn. 2 months had passed. Since Dubai, the world was still adjusting to the revelations about Project Oracle, but here in the quiet of Eleanor's mansion, more personal changes were taking shape. "Mom's doing better," Alexandra said softly. "The doctors say she might be able to come home soon." Sarah nodded. Catherine's recovery was remarkable. Once freed from Oracle's influence, her enhanced mind had begun to heal, to find balance. "And your mother?" Sarah asked. "Still fragile, but she knows me now, really sees me." Alexandra turned from the window. "She asked about you yesterday, said she remembers you from before, from when you tried to expose them." Sarah's hands tightened on the adoption papers. "Alexandra, these don't have to change anything. Your mother is recovering, and I would never want to—" "Stop." Alexandra's voice was gentle but firm. "Mom and I talked about this. She knows. She needs time to heal, to become someone who can be a mother again." She crossed to the desk, touching the papers. "But you already are." Eleanor entered quietly, carrying a tray of tea. "The board meeting just ended. The trust is officially in control." "And the other facilities?" Sarah asked. "Being converted to actual schools, real research centers." Alexandra's smile was satisfied. Everything grandfather wanted before Oracle corrupted his dream. The survivors. Sarah had insisted on calling them survivors, not subjects. All receiving care, real care. Eleanor poured tea with steady hands. "The trust will ensure they have everything they need, education, therapy, opportunities." Alexandra picked up a pen, studying the adoption papers. "There's something else we need to discuss about the future." Sarah tensed slightly. They hadn't talked about what would come next after the dust settled. "I've been thinking about John," Alexandra continued, "about what he taught me, what he died protecting." She met Sarah's eyes. "There are other children out there, other programs, other organizations doing what Oracle did. They need people who understand, who can help." "Alexandra," Sarah began, "I'm not saying tomorrow, or even next year." Alexandra's voice was measured, thoughtful. "But someday, when I'm ready, I want to build something. A team, an organization, something that protects children like me, exposes people like Richard." "It would be dangerous," Sarah warned. "I know. That's why I'll need partners, people with experience." Alexandra smiled, slightly. "A mother-daughter operation, maybe?" Sarah felt tears threaten. "You really want both, all of it." Alexandra took her hand. "You as my mother, legally and in every way that matters, and you as my partner, when I'm ready to help others." She squeezed Sarah's fingers. "Choose me back?" Sarah pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Always, in any way you need me." Eleanor watched them with bright eyes. "The papers can wait, if you need time to—" "No," they said together, then laughed. Alexandra reached for the pen. "I choose this family, the one we built ourselves." Sarah signed first, her hand steady. Alexandra added her signature below, the letters precise and clear. "Well then," Eleanor smiled, "I believe this calls for something stronger than tea." She opened a cabinet, removing a bottle of champagne, and, with a wink at Alexandra, a sparkling cider. Outside, autumn painted the world in fierce colors of change. Inside, a family forged in fire celebrated not just victory, but possibility. Sarah studied her daughter. Officially, legally, eternally her daughter. and saw not just the wounded child she'd rescued, but the extraordinary person she was becoming. Someone who had taken the weapons built into her and turned them into tools for justice. Alexandra caught her looking and smiled, thinking deep thoughts, happy ones. Sarah touched the adoption papers gently, about family and choices and second chances, and third chances and fourth chances, Alexandra added. As many as we need. They raised their glasses as Eleanor offered a toast. To the family we choose and the future we build. To love that heals, Sarah added. Alexandra's voice was soft, but certain. To choosing each other, the papers lay signed and sealed, making official what their hearts had known since a burning house brought them together. But they were more than just mother and daughter now. They were partners, protectors, champions for those who needed them. The light through Eleanor's stained glass windows painted them in colors of hope, transformation, and possibility. Their war was won, but their story was just beginning. The new family portrait hung in Eleanor's study. Sarah, Alexandra, Catherine, and Eleanor herself, united in a moment of joy at a recent celebration. But it was more than just a photograph. It was a statement of defiance, of healing, of family redefined. Sarah studied it while reviewing the latest reports. The Blackwood Corporation was transforming under the Trust's guidance, its resources redirected toward legitimate research and education. The Oracle survivors were thriving with proper support, their enhanced abilities now gifts rather than weapons. Found. Another one, Alexandra called from her workstation, a sophisticated setup that would have made John proud. A program in Eastern Europe, not Oracle but similar approach. Sarah moved to look over her shoulder at the data. You're sure the patterns match? Alexandra pulled up comparative analyses. Same type of shell companies, same kind of medical supply orders. They're not as sophisticated as Oracle, but they're hurting children, Sarah finished. They shared a look of understanding. Catherine entered, carrying fresh tea. Her hands were steady now, her eyes clear. The doctors called her recovery miraculous, but Sarah knew better. It was pure will, a mother's determination to be whole for her daughter. I've been reviewing the technical data, Catherine said, setting down the tray. Their methodology is flawed. They clearly didn't learn from Oracle's mistakes, which makes them dangerous, Alexandra noted, more likely to have casualties. Then we move fast. Sarah pulled up their secure communication channel. Rodriguez, the detective's voice came through clearly, already on it. Marcus is making inquiries through Interpol channels. Eleanor's contacts in the EU are standing by. They had built something remarkable in the months since Dubai, a network of protectors, investigators, and healers. The Trust's resources combined, with their unique skills and understanding, created something unprecedented, a force for finding and helping enhanced children. Eleanor joined them, tablet in hand. The board approved the new initiative, the Blackwood Foundation for Advanced Education and Protection. Bit obvious with the name, wasn't it? Alexandra smiled. Sometimes hiding in plain sight is the best coverage, Eleanor replied. Besides, who would suspect a charitable foundation? Sarah touched the family portrait. John would have loved this, using their own systems against them. He'd be proud of all of us, Alexandra said softly. Then, more businesslike, the European facility has 14 potential subjects. Their security is mainly focused on external threats. They never consider that the real threat might be information, Catherine added, her enhanced mind catching patterns only she and Alexandra could see. Their data security is particularly weak. Sarah felt a familiar surge of purpose. This was what they were meant to do, not just heal from their own wounds, but prevent others from being wounded. Time estimate? She asked. Alexandra's fingers flew over her keyboard. 2 weeks to full confirmation. Another week to put pieces in place with Rodriguez's team and Eleanor's resources. 3 weeks to save 14 children, Sarah nodded. Let's make it 2. The room hummed with focused energy. 4 generations of women, each touched by Oracle in different ways, now united in purpose. A notification popped up. Marcus had secured the necessary international warrants. Everything would be legal, official. They had learned that justice worked best in the light. "There's something else," Alexandra said quietly. "One of the Oracle survivors. She wants to join us, Lisa Chen, from the Singapore facility. She's 16 now, and she has skills we could use." Sarah studied her daughter thoughtfully. "You want to train her? I want to give her what John gave me, a way to use her abilities for good." Catherine touched Alexandra's shoulder gently. "The next generation of protectors. Speaking of which," Eleanor pulled out an envelope. The paperwork came through. "The trust is officially transformed into the foundation with provisions for future leadership." Alexandra opened it, reading quickly. "You're making me director, but I'm not even—" "You'll grow into it," Eleanor said firmly, "and you'll have all of us to help." Sarah watched her daughter absorb this new responsibility, seeing not the scared girl from the burning house, but the leader she was becoming. The family portrait caught the afternoon light, 4 women who had transformed trauma into triumph. Below it, Alexandra's workstation displayed data about children who needed help, while around them, the Foundation's resources stood ready. They had built something unique, a family, a mission, a future. The Oracle program had tried to create weapons, but instead had forged protectors, had built, through fire and pain and love, exactly what the world needed. Sarah touched the Foundation's seal, the Blackwood crest, reimagined with symbols of hope and healing. "Ready?" Alexandra's smile was bright and fierce. "Always." Together, they turned toward their next mission, their next rescue, their next chance to turn darkness into light. The house deed bore all their names: Sarah Mitchell, Alexandra Blackwood Mitchell, Catherine Winters, and Eleanor Blackwood. A lakefront property just outside Chicago, it would serve as both home and headquarters for their growing foundation. "The security system's better than the White House," Rodriguez commented, reviewing. "The plans, but it doesn't look like a fortress." "That's the point." Alexandra led them through the sun-filled great room. A safe place shouldn't feel like a prison. The space was designed for their unique needs. The basement held state-of-the-art communication and monitoring equipment. The ground floor featured comfortable living areas and meeting spaces. The upper floors contained private apartments for their expanding family, including rooms for visiting survivors and team members. Sarah watched Catherine arrange books in the library, texts on psychology, neuroscience, and child development, mixing with family photos and children's novels. Her recovery had transformed her into someone new, not the person she was before Oracle, but someone stronger, wiser. "The first group arrives next week," Catherine said, shelving a volume on trauma therapy. 3 children from the European facility, along with their families. "How are they adjusting?" Sarah asked. "Better than we did." Catherine's smile held no bitterness. "They have something we didn't: understanding, support, a community who knows what they've been through." Eleanor entered carrying blueprints for the Foundation's next project, a specialized school where enhanced children could learn to control and direct their abilities. "The board approved the full budget," she reported. "Construction begins next month." Alexandra looked up from her computer. "Lisa's design modifications are brilliant. She really understands what these kids need." The 16-year-old Singapore survivor had indeed proven invaluable, bringing fresh perspective to their work. She was currently in Europe, helping Rodriguez's team with the latest rescue operation. "John would love this place," Alexandra said softly, running her hand along. "The warm wooden railings. It's everything he tried to create for me, but better." Sarah wrapped an arm around her daughter. "He gave you safety. You're giving these children a future." An alert chimed from Alexandra's laptop. One of their monitoring systems had picked up something new, but for once it wasn't a threat. The Jakarta program is shutting down, she reported with satisfaction. Voluntarily, they saw what happened to Oracle and decided to close shop before we could expose them. Prevention through deterrence. Eleanor nodded. Sometimes the best victories are the battles we don't have to fight. Catherine joined them, carrying more books. The published research is having an impact too. Real studies on cognitive enhancement, done ethically, showing what's possible without hurting children. They had transformed the Oracle research, stripping away the cruelty to find the genuine breakthroughs beneath. The Foundation's scientific division was making remarkable progress in helping gifted children understand and control their abilities. Sarah studied the house deed again. Such a simple document to represent so much change. This wasn't just a headquarters or a safe house. It was a home, built on truth and trust instead of secrets and fear. The sound of laughter drew them to the windows. In the backyard, some of the Oracle survivors were playing basketball. Ordinary teenagers now. Their enhanced minds no longer weapons, but gifts to be celebrated. "We did it," Alexandra said quietly. "We really did it." "No," Sarah corrected gently. "We're doing it. Present tense, every day." Eleanor raised an eyebrow at Alexandra's computer. "Speaking of which, tell them about Moscow." Alexandra's expression turned serious. "Another program, very early stages. They're trying to recreate Oracle's results using genetic manipulation instead of chemical enhancement." "Dangerous," Catherine frowned. "Very, but—" Alexandra smiled slightly. "Lisa's already infiltrated their network. Marcus has local contacts ready, and our Foundation's child welfare experts have identified the perfect legal pressure points." Sarah recognized the look in her daughter's eyes, the fierce determination that had brought down Oracle, now focused on a new mission. "How soon?" she asked. "2 weeks to build the case, then we move." Alexandra's fingers flew over the keyboard. Together, they gathered around her workstation, 4 generations of protectors united in purpose. Outside, the lake glittered with possibility, while inside, their unique family continued to grow and evolve. The house deed might bear their names, but their real ownership was measured in lives changed, children saved, and darkness transformed to light. They had built something extraordinary, a home for healing, a base for justice, and a foundation for hope. The next chapter was already beginning. 1 year later, the school registration form looked deceptively ordinary in Alexandra's hands. Blackwood, Academy for Exceptional Students. But like everything in their lives now, the ordinary masked something extraordinary. "First semester starts next month," she said, watching students and families tour the campus grounds through the head office window. 28 students enrolled, all survivors or their siblings. Sarah joined her at the window, plus 3 more from Moscow once their paperwork clears. The Moscow operation had been their smoothest yet. The program shut down before it could truly begin. The children returned to families who now understood both the gifts and the challenges they faced. "Lisa's doing well with the younger ones," Sarah noted, watching the teenager lead an orientation group. The former Singapore survivor had found her calling as a mentor, bridging the gap between the students and the adult staff. "She reminds me of John sometimes," Alexandra smiled. "That same way of making complicated things simple, making scary things manageable." Catherine appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "The new research results are in. The ethical protocols we developed are being adopted worldwide. Real progress in cognitive enhancement without the darkness." They had transformed Oracle's legacy of pain into something healing. The Academy wasn't just a school, it was a model for how to nurture extraordinary children, how to celebrate differences instead of weaponizing them. Eleanor joined them, carrying a framed photo for Alexandra's office wall. It showed their entire extended family, the 4 of them, Rodriguez and Marcus, Lisa and the other young mentors, even Mr. Chen from Singapore, who now ran their international outreach program. The foundation board is impressed, Eleanor reported. They've approved funding for 3 more campuses, Europe, Asia, South America. Going global, Sarah mused, just like Oracle did, but in reverse, healing instead of hurting. Alexandra touched the registration form thoughtfully. You know what today is? 1 year since the fire? Sarah nodded. Since I found you. Since we found each other, Alexandra corrected. She had grown taller over the year, her face losing some of its childhood softness, but her eyes still held that unique combination of wisdom and hope. Through the window, they watched another tour group arrive. Parents looking uncertain but determined, children trying to hide their differences while desperately wanting to belong. Sarah recognized the look. She had seen it in Alexandra's eyes that first day in the hospital. They're scared, Alexandra said softly. Like I was, afraid of what they can do, what was done to them. She straightened her shoulders. But we're going to show them what I learned. That being different doesn't mean being alone. That family isn't just blood, it's choice. That our hardest experiences can become our greatest strengths. Sarah hugged her daughter close, remembering the frightened girl from the burning house, seeing the leader she had become. You know, she said, when I ran into that fire, I thought I was just saving one child. Alexandra smiled. Instead, you started a revolution. We started it, Sarah corrected, all of us, and we're not finished. Catherine tapped her tablet. Speaking of which, our monitors picked up something in Brazil. Early stages, but the patterns match. Another program? Eleanor asked. Maybe. Alexandra was already moving to her computer. Or maybe someone who needs our help before things go wrong. Either way, we'll be ready, Sarah finished. They gathered around Alexandra's desk, 4 generations of protectors united in purpose. Outside, future students explored what would become their sanctuary. Inside, a family forged in fire planned their next mission. The registration form sat completed on the desk, marking not an ending but a continuation. They had transformed Oracle's twisted dream of enhancement into something beautiful, a place where extraordinary children could learn, grow, and thrive. Sarah touched the school's motto, emblazoned in gold beneath the reformed Blackwood crest. From shadow to light. It was their story, their mission, their legacy, not just mother and daughter, but an entire extended family dedicated to protecting the next generation of exceptional children, making sure that no other child would face those shadows alone. Alexandra caught her mother's eye and smiled. No words were needed. They both knew that while their first chapter had ended, their real story was still unfolding. Together, they turned toward that future, ready for whatever challenges it might bring. After all, they had already proven that the strongest weapons were love, truth, and the family you choose. The fire that had brought them together had forged something unbreakable, and from those flames, a new dawn had risen.